let's do an example here before moving on. Here I have my mannequin that I use in class sometimes to demonstrate or for demonstrations. And let's pretend that the mannequin is alive and is running across the screen here. And while it's running, I snap my fingers and freeze it at this particular point in time. And I want to know, okay, what is the pose of my mannequin at this point in time? Where is it positioned in the room, and how is its body and its joints oriented at that point in time? To do that, I would need to describe its generalized coordinates, and that would be a process like this. We would start from some initial pose with all of the values of all the generalized coordinates set to 0. So let's take my mannequin and get it in its neutral pose here. Just zero out all of my joint angles. Okay. And I'm also going to position the pelvis of the mannequin at the origin of my global reference frame here in the, for you guys, I believe this will be the bottom right corner of the room here. Okay. I would then translate the pelvis along each one of these 3 axes of this reference frame in the corner of the screen here. So I do a translation along the x-axis, do a translation along the y-axis, and then a translation along the z-axis. I would then do a rotation of the pelvis about each one of those 3 axes. So 1 rotation, 2 rotations, 3 rotations. I don't remember if that's exactly the pose it was in initially, but you get the idea. 3 rotations, 1 about each one of those axes for the pelvis, about the global reference frame. I then need to pose all of my joints here. I need to orient my segments of the body here about their local reference frames. Okay, so I would have an angle here for the hip and the knee and the ankle, and same thing for this other leg, hip, knee position, ankle position. Same thing for the upper body, shoulder, elbow, hand, shoulder, elbow, hand. And then a couple other joints here, you'd have 3 rotations for the trunk there and 3 rotations for the head. And now I'm back in that pose that I was originally at before I zeroed everything out and moved it down to the corner of the corner of the screen there, representing the origin of the global reference frame. Okay? Now, all of those little motions and rotations that I did, those 3 translations of the pelvis, those 3 rotations of the pelvis, and all those other rotations of all those joints, imagine representing each of those with a variable, Q1, Q2, Q3 through Q whatever, and imagine attaching a kinematic mechanical value to each one. For the translations, it'd be some translation in meters. For the rotations, it'd be some rotation in radians or degrees, and then capturing all of those pieces of information together in a vector. That vector would be the generalized coordinates of this model, the full set of pieces of independent positions, information on position that you would need to unambiguously describe the pose of this thing in 3D space.